Okay, because, uh, the way this session rolls is first I will go through the presentation that I have prepared, the attempt approach for all three sections of that. And then once that is done, I will open it up to questions. In between, please don't unmute yourself out of turn. In fact, I'm taking away your ability to unmute yourself. Once that is done, at the end, I'll open it up to Q&A. At that time, whatever questions you have left over, you can ask. Okay. Today's session is about attempt approach for all three sections of CAT. In case, uh, in case you want to have a more detailed discussion, grander discussion, grander explanation about attempt and analysis, there is a playlist on channel Anastasis Academy where my opinion on the issue of VARC analysis, how to do VARC analysis, how to do Q analysis, how to do DILR analysis, everything is present. It is going to be pretty much on similar lines. Let's get to it. My own introduction, I have a teaching experience of more than 13 years now. I started teaching back in 2011. So now it is 13 plus years. I am currently a mentor at Anastasis Academy and I'm a commerce graduate. That is all that you need to know. The agenda that we are going to cover today is my approach to VARC section, my approach to attempting the DILR section and the QA section. For all three sections, how do I approach them? I am not for a moment claiming that this is the best way to approach each of these sections. You may choose to have your own approach style, and that is perfectly all right. I'm simply sharing what works for me and what work as in with passage of time, with several rounds of experimentation, I've identified what systems, what ways in which I approach the paper, I am able to maximize my score. Given that everyone has different skill levels, everyone has different attributes at the time of attempting the paper, your own style may be different from mine, and that is perfectly all right. The best way to identify what works for you, what doesn't work for you, is via experimentation. You taking, let's say, 3, 4, 5 mocks, doing a different thing, and then checking out what works best for you. What works best for me is what I'm going to share. And then I'll also potentially mention how some other students of mine have approached it in the past and have gotten successful results. Okay, VARC section. I see VARC section as two separate tests. One is the reading comprehension section, the other is the VA section. In reading comprehension, how I go about doing it is, I read the first paragraph of the passage, decide based on comprehension level if attempting it makes sense. At this time, I have not gone through any of the questions, just the first paragraph. If things are readily understandable, if things make sense to me, then okay, I will go ahead and take this passage. If questions are not readily understandable, I don't make a judgment call on whether I don't decide to attempt it right away. I avoid parameters like number of questions, although that is no longer a factor. Back in the day when CAT used to have, like, some passages were 3-question passages, some passages were 6-question passages. So at that time, number of questions was also a parameter. Length of the passage is immaterial. Familiarity with the issue is absolutely immaterial. Very often you would find that a passage that you leave alone because it seemed like it is from an unfamiliar topic turns out to be a very easy passage, and a passage that you take up because you absolutely love philosophy or you absolutely love biotechnology. And later on, the questions in that passage turn out to be extremely incongruous. So familiarity is a good indicator, but it is not the sole parameter. And additionally, it should not be the decision of attempting or not attempting a passage is not based on whether I'm familiar with this topic or not. When I'm reading the passage, when I'm going through the paragraphs, I keep on making up mental summary. For those of us who are at the beginning of our preparation phase or are not very good at our skills right now, a physical summary is really advisable. When you, this is where you read a paragraph, write down a few words, 1 sentence, 2 sentence. What was the major statement being made in that paragraph? Major idea being communicated. Then you move on to the next one. And I keep on making mental summary because I've gone through several thousands of RCs by now, hopefully, that I I keep on making mental summary, and this is a skill that I have developed with a lot of practice by going through lots of RCs, I'm able to create and retain information related to passages so that I don't have to come back to the passage every time for going through every question. Okay. Not knowing a word doesn't mean a passage should not be attended. This is extremely critical. There is something known as contextual meaning. Now, within contextual meaning, there is going to be a aspect of connotation. There is going to be an aspect of connotation, and there is going to be an aspect of, let's say, uh, inferred meaning. For instance, if there was a statement, Ravi claimed that Sheila was looking multitudinous in her new outfit, which made Sheila blush. I guess most of us would not know the meaning of this word multitudinous right now. But the fact that Sheila is blushing should tell you that it can go one of two ways. Either she's feeling embarrassed and she's blushing, or it was a compliment and she was very humbled by receiving that compliment and therefore she's blushing. Blushing. But I can definitely understand this is an adjective. This is an adjective, and this is describing how Sheila is looking. That is all. Now, subsequent sentences, whether Sheila is behaving positively towards Ravi or negatively towards Rami, would tell us whether this is a positive attribute or whether this is a negative attribute. Now, pulchritudinous, the simplest meaning of the word is beautiful. It's simply beautiful. So, most likely the next part of the sentence. Whenever you're trying to derive contextual meaning, try to identify the connotation, whether it is a positive connotation word or negative connotation word. For instance, if you call somebody, let's say I have convinced someone to do X versus I have manipulated someone to do X. In both these instances, I'm getting the other party to agree to a stream of thought that I have, not necessarily that originates in them. But when I say convinced, it is a positive connotation word versus me saying it is me manipulating them, it is a negative connotation. Similarly, let's say I call somebody clever and I call somebody cunning. In both these instances, I am talking of their mental acuity. At the same time, when I call somebody cunning, there is a negative aspect associated with it. So you should have the ability to derive contextual meaning, connotation, and inferred meaning at that time. Now, even if you're not entirely certain, of what that precise word is, leave it. I can happily reduce. Ravi claimed that Sheila was looking something in her new outfit which made Sheila blush. So, pulchritudinous is either embarrassing or it is a compliment. These two versions are there. Depending upon the subsequent line, I can derive the meaning and go on to do my work. Then, fifth thing that you should be taking care of is never select an answer, always reject answers. And as much as you would talk to a lot of people and they always claim, we always arrive at our answer by rejection. The rejection process is very, very askew in most cases because, and this is true for most YouTube knowledge videos on RCs as well, because there what we have is, let's say there is option A, there is option B, there is option C, and there is option D. It is almost as if people know the answer beforehand. If I know the answer is C, I can generate any random reason to reject A. I can generate any random reason to reject B. I can generate any random reason to reject D. In fact, one of the most common ways in which people reject options in VARC is usage of the following framework. The choice is too narrow and therefore is the wrong answer. The choice is too wide and therefore is the wrong answer. This is absolute nonsense because in your experience, you would have encountered there are several times over when people in one question you would see the answer choice is too narrow and therefore is rejected. But in the subsequent question, even when it is narrow, that ends up being the right answer. So narrow, wide, these framings are not correct. Ideally, what should be happening is in the rejection process, it is like a death match. It is like two superheroes colliding and then a winner gets identified. What we do is we do A versus B. Both the options could be wrong, but we do A versus B, and between the two of them, which is less bad. Let's say in this fight, A versus B, B wins, B survives. Then we do B versus C. Let's say in this fight, B versus C, C survives. And then finally we do C versus D. And let's say in this fight, C survives. Then my final choice is option C. And this is the process of elimination that should be followed. Because what this ensures is, even if an answer choice is lacking in some respect, even if an answer choice is not the perfect answer choice, which is the case most of the time, even then, you have identified the best answer choice out of the lot. Very often, what people do is A is missing this, so A is bad. B is missing this, so B is bad. So between C and D, okay, let me do D. Then you're not doing elimination at all, because you have gotten rid of A based on some reason. Maybe based on that reason, D is also bad. But for A, it is leading to rejection. For D, it is not leading to rejection. This process of doing A versus B and then B versus C and then C versus D, what this ensures is, what this enables us to do is, even if you don't have perfect answer choice, which is the case most of the time, most of the answer choices will have some lacuna or the other. So even when there is an answer choice which is not perfect, not fulfilling all criteria, not being perfect in all regards, not mentioning all points that should be mentioned, yet you are able to identify which is the best one. And therefore, this process of elimination, A versus B, B versus C, C versus D, an entire death match needs to happen. You cannot limit it to, I see something bad in C, so it is out. I see something bad in D, so this is out. That is absolutely counterproductive and only works if you know the answer beforehand. It does not work when you're attempting a new passage. Okay. Option 6, and this is for those people who do the let me reject A straight away, let me reject C straight away. If you are able to reject all or are unable to reject more than one, leave the question for the time. What this is getting to is, just because you have read through a passage, it does not obligate you to attempt all questions in that passage. If you read through a passage and you are fairly confident of 3 answers, but you are not confident of one answer, one question in the passage, you can leave that question alone. There is no obligation. No, you have to attempt it. If you don't attempt it, you will end up doing poorly. You can happily choose to pick and choose the questions within the passage that you find are within your range and you're attempting. It is much better to have a 0 rather than a -1. It's much better to have a 0 than a -1. Additionally, for unfamiliar topics, what works wonderfully well is drawing analogies to things that we are aware of, but do not fall into the trap of forcing an analogy when it doesn't apply. This is with regards to an RC passage that I had attempted, wherein we were talking of socialism, 2 different forms of socialism. One wherein you had independent units which were taking care, as in, let's say, the kind of socialism Gandhi had envisioned for India, wherein every village was supposed to be a self-sustaining unit, and all decisions about the local community, about the local region, were to be made by local leaders only. The opposite side of the spectrum was the Russian socialism model, wherein they had a central command, and every decision was being made by that central command with regards to the entire population, the entire region. These are 2 different types of socialism that was mentioned in a passage. Now, given that I used to be a cricket fan, I thought of 2 different types of captains or 2 different types of systems that used to happen. And this is mid 2000s when Ganguly was the captain. He led with an iron fist. Everything was within his control. Every decision, who was opening, who was batting, who was fielding where, every decision was being made by Ganguly. When Rahul Dravid came into captaincy, the first thing he did was he made groups of captains. There was a fielding captain, there was a batting captain, there was a bowling captain, the fielding captain, and that council of members that were in the fielding decision making group. They were deciding which fielder should be where and what positions they must be taking up. The batting council decided who would be batting at what order, which place, and everything. And the bowling council decided which bowler should be bowling the first over, the last over, the middle overs, all of that. Basically, one was a centralized form of governance, another was decentralized form of governance. And because I was familiar with this cricket-based setup, I was able to draw parallel to what this socialism system was. Another parallel that I thought of and I got to know of was uh, related to astrophysics and brain surgery. Most of the research that exists about parts of brain and how it operates, we have very little information on that front. We have very little information on that front because experimentation on human brain is not available. We have a lot of second-hand derived knowledge. When somebody has an accident, let's say they hit this part of their head, this part of their head, right backside, then maybe the language changes. So we postulate that okay, this side of the brain takes care of the language aspect. Let's say if on the left side of the head there is an injury, so this person does not have any locomotor control anymore. So okay, so this maintains the balance of the body. That is how brain inferences or brain related advancements have been made for the past century. Now, similarly, because experimentation cannot be done, we cannot possibly have valid or undoubtable inferences here. Similarly, when it comes to astrophysics, all you have are theories there. You don't really have precise outcomes or precise experiments there because you cannot recreate the Big Bang. You cannot go thousands of light years into other planets and make postulates about how that environment would be, what the atmosphere is like, what sort of rain is happening. Most of it, most of the information we have about outer space, about astrophysics, it is based on theories only. Along the way, when some better theory comes in front of the scientists, which makes more sense, which fills in the gap that they currently have, they move on to that. But there is no way to prove it. There is no way to do experiments on it. And because I'm familiar with the brain injury, the brain version of it, I wasn't familiar with the astrophysics aspect of it. But recently there was a passage on which it was astrophysics and planets and this and that, all that work was happening. Because I was familiar with the brain injury portion, I was able to implement the same understanding there and get to the answers to the question. But do not fall into the trap of forcing an analogy. Do not try to necessarily everything I don't know. I will necessarily force it into a setup that I'm familiar with. If it beautifully fits, if it is appropriate, great, go ahead, use it. If it does not fit, then try to understand it on its own merit. Do not try to necessarily force fit an analogy there because it does not always work. It is very much like quant formula. If the question is straightforward, let's say you're doing compound interest based solving, you have the rate of interest, you have the number of periods, and you have the principal, and you have all that data point that you need, and one variable is missing, and you have to calculate. Okay, happily you can calculate. But if there is information along the way which tells us he repaid half the principal amount after 2 years, and then the interest rate also fell down from 20% to 15%. But we said, no, formula for compound interest that I know, these are the numbers. I will necessarily plug in that formula and use it in its pristine form. That is stupidity. That is solving it incorrectly for the sake of solving. That is where knowing how formula came into being is also important. Do not force fit a system. Now, this additional notes, this is something very, very individual to be. If you're going to play the numbers, test that theory first in box. What I mean by this is a lot of people come to this conclusion that even if I attempt all questions, let's say I'm confident about 8 questions out of 16 in RC. And even if I attempt 8 questions, other 8 I attempt, even when I'm not confident, if let's say I get 2 correct and 6 wrong, there is no net loss. If I get 3 correct and 5 wrong, I'm in positives. If I get 4 correct and 4 wrong, I'm in even greater positive. So this indicates that I should be risking it all and attempting more and more questions in RCs. This presupposes a very, very valuable underlying assumption that for a question that you're not confident in, you will have greater than 25% accuracy. Assuming 8 questions are left, you will have greater than 25% accuracy. If you think that this mathematical framework makes sense, test that theory first in box, in full length test that you're taking. Please go ahead and try it out. Do it for 4 or 5 tests. If overall you see for the questions that you weren't entirely sure in, if you mark those questions, does it lead to a upswing or does it lead to a downswing? If it leads to a downswing, you have to be more selective and identify, okay, these many I will attempt. If it is not sound for me, if I'm not sure of the answer, I will not mark those answers. For me personally, I've seen I'm usually confident of around 50% of the questions in the RC section. We have 16 questions happening right now in the RC. So 8 out of 16, I'm fairly confident of. These will necessarily be right. But for remaining 8 questions, I have seen with my practice, even in questions that I'm not entirely certain of, and I attribute a lot of it to my elimination process. That even when I'm uncertain, my accuracy over entire test framework is upwards of 70%. And therefore, it makes absolute sense for me to go all out and attempt all questions. What also helps me is my slightly more than average reading speed. I have a decent reading speed, so I am able to read the passages and attempt the questions and be selective. There is rarely ever an English paper in which I don't attempt all questions. Historically, I always score more in English, despite me being a DILR and QA teacher. Historically, I always score more in English because English is easier. The last bit is scientific temper resolves all doubts. What I mean by scientific temper is there are 2 kinds of people who prepare for RCs or study VARC. One is, I have my answer. If I have identified my answer as A, then okay, everything else I will find flaws with, but I will never critically analyze option. Versus somebody, okay, I think my answer is A. But if somebody was looking to, as in, we don't take this as the gospel truth, we take this is a hypothesis. What would be the null hypothesis? What could potentially be wrong in option A that makes it bad? What could potentially be right in option B that makes it right? The intent has to be, let me learn more rather than let me simply justify my answer. In the process of practicing for RCs, this scientific temper wherein the intent is simply to learn more. If there is a process by which thought should run, if there is a process by which I should be eliminating options or identifying, okay, these pattern of things is happening when I'm attempting a test. If you have scientific temper, very often you wouldn't even need external input. You would approach this with, okay, final answer says B. Very often you would find that VARC answers are not very, let's say, convincing. But them not being convincing is not a excuse for us to be stubborn and saying, no, I think it should be C only. You should list out a reason why I'm rejecting A, why I'm rejecting B, why I'm rejecting D. And then see, for the reasons for which you have rejected A, B, and D, does C fall short on that parameter? If it does, then perhaps the line of reasoning that I'm using to eliminate options is not correct anyway. So the decision-making parameter has to be something else. And then you'll be more inclined towards expanding your knowledge base and expanding your ways of attempting and understanding the RC passages. This is all for RCs. For the verbal ability section, there are 4 primary question types. One is parajumble, the other is parasummary, odd one out, and FIB paragraph. See, for me, for the RC section, if I am having a bad day, if I'm having an extremely bad day and passages are extremely difficult, I devote around 24 minutes for 4 passages. This is where my reading speed comes into play. I'm able to read a passage in 2.5, 3 minutes, and then 3 minutes for the 4 questions that are there, I can work with. But I understand this is not the average reading speed. This is not the average rate at which people solve. So perhaps you would take 30 minutes for 3 or 4 passages, or even maybe 25 minutes for 2 passages, depending upon which grouping you fall into. That will adjust your time for V. I have roughly 2 minutes per question available for VA. I have 2 minutes per question available for VA, but I will now be approaching it as if I have 10 minutes for 8 VA questions. 10 minutes for 8 VA questions. That does not translate into I have to attempt all 8 VA questions, but the time that I see, I decide to attempt, I decide to reject, whatever happens. For parajumbles, my attempt is, or my approach is definitely attempt. I will most definitely attempt a parajumble question. I will never leave it alone. But, and this is something that most people agree with, attempting parajumbles is essential. You should most definitely attempt it. But then remember, there are two prices that we are paying when we are attempting a question. One is the cost of negative marking that we can get. On that front, parajumble is great. There is no negative marking. But also do not fall into the trap of devoting a lot of time to parajumbles, because the other cost that you're paying is the time that you're spending per question. So definitely attempt, but in the endeavor to attempt, do not waste time. It is very critical you don't waste time. Additionally, for parajumbles, one of the weirdest things that people always do is look for the starting sentence. Starting or concluding sentence. And I'm fairly confident we must have solved enough number of parajumble questions to realize this does not work. This is very, very inefficient. Always look for pairing clues. Which two statements make a pair? Which three statements make a pair? If you can find pairing clues, just work with them. That has to be the way you process here. Don't look for starting and unless the starting or concluding sentence is hitting you in the face. Okay, this has to be the starting sentence. Don't actively go out looking for starting sentence, because it takes away time and does not help in solving. It ends up taking away a lot of critical time that is available for you to attempt. Do not look for the beginning sentence, because what part of passage is being presented is it. We know paragraphs, the parajumbles that come, sometimes they are from the third paragraph, sometimes they are from the fourth paragraph. I'm sure you've seen enough number of parajumbles by now that start with however, that start with although. These are called transition words in technical terms, yet they are the first sentence of the parajumble. And therefore, looking for the opening sentence is absolutely not the right way to approach it. However, unlikely can be the first sentence. Do not waste more than 1 to 1.5 minutes per question. You would also notice in your solving, in your processing and experimentation, parajumbles that do get solved in 60, 70 seconds. Parajumbles that require more time than this don't really get right anyway. It's not like if you devote 4 minutes to a parajumble question, you will get it right. If you have to get it right, you will get it in 60 seconds. If you are not getting it right, you will not get it right even in 4 minutes. And therefore, after 90 seconds is like the upper limit. 90 seconds is like the upper limit. After 1.5 minutes, whatever you feel like is the most appropriate order, mark and move. Mark and move. This time will get adjusted based on how much time you have left. For me, I do 1.5 minutes per question here. You can perhaps choose to do 1 minute. You can perhaps choose to do 65 seconds or 70 seconds, whatever works for you. Next, para summary. Given that there is negative marking here, I may or may not attempt. Now, how to go about solving it? Please make your own independent summary with key points and only then check options. Don't jump to options directly. Because when you start jumping into options, in para summary questions, very often they have this wonderful technique of confusing people by giving distorted ideas. Distorted ideas being, if I say Ram looked at Shyam and said, Shyam looked hungry. Ram looked at Shyam and he said he was hungry. People simply look at hungry, Ram, Shyam. Oh, this is perfectly all right. That is not correct. Who was looking hungry? What was happening in that storyline? Make your own independent summary. You don't have to write a full sentence. Key points that you have identified, only identify those key points. Reject the ones that have something in contradiction. What I mean by contradiction is something that is factually inaccurate, something that is not aligned with what is given in the paragraph. We reject those options straight away. Now, if multiple options are left, select the ones that covers maximum number of points identified by you. Again, this leads to a problem of here also. Very often what people do is option A is not mentioning this, so rejected. Option B is not mentioning this, so rejected. Option C is not in line with passage, so rejected. So D is the answer. despite D also missing some critical part of the summary that you were thinking of. That is why even here, the process has to be A is missing something, B is missing something, C is wrong. So C is out straight away. C is out because C was giving something contradictory to the passage. Now between A and B, I have to make a judgment call. The point that is missing, what is more critical? The point that is missing in A or point that is missing in B? If the point that is missing in B is more critical, it should have been included in the passage. Now B goes away. Now A versus D, whatever is missing in A, whatever is missing in D, which of these was more critical? Whichever point was more critical and is missing, that option will go away. And finally, we'll mark option A. The perfect answer choice does not exist. Every answer choice will have some mistake, will have something lacking. So you have to identify which option is the best out of the four, not the perfect answer choice. Okay, next one. Then there is the third version, the odd one out, that sadly went away from the question list in 2022, but made a remarkable comeback in 2023 CAT. Again, definitely attempt, but do not waste time. Do not look for a common theme to eliminate an option, but instead make a paragraph and then whatever should be is left should be the answer. Here, very often, if you practice odd one out, people see this is talking of C. This is also talking of C. This is also talking of C. This is also talking of C. But this is talking of beach. So this is out. These four are talking of C, should be there. Now, if you have very little time left, if you are devoting only 20 seconds to this question, great. This works. This is absolutely wonderful. But if you can devote close to 60 seconds to this question, don't try to do this. Use the same skills that we use for paragraphs. If we are saying this option is the odd one out, this should not be a part of the paragraph. Take it out of the running. For the remaining four sentences, try to make an order. If you can make an order, then great. If you can't make an order, what you've identified is not accurate. Moving on would make more sense. Do not waste more than 1 to 1.5 minutes per question. This time will again get adjusted based on how much time you have left. FIB paragraph may or may not attempt because there is negative marking involved. Here, the way I approach it is, the question format is usually this. There is a sentence, then there is a paragraph. You have this sentence, then a blank, this sentence, then a blank, this sentence, then a blank, this sentence, then a blank. Something like this. Question format is something like this. Because this is a new question variant, a lot of people have no idea of how to approach this or how to make max use of it. What I have identified for myself and works wonderfully well is, I deliberately skip over this sentence. I don't read this in the beginning. Absolutely do not read this in the beginning. I read the paragraph. I read through whatever sentences are given here, and I see if the switch from here to here makes sense. If at all I had to include something in between, what would I talk of? Then switch from here to here. Tick, tick, cross, cross, circle, circle, and triangle, triangle. But I read through the paragraph, and if it seems like midway during the paragraph, the stream of thought has changed entirely. It has become exceedingly difficult to keep track of what was being talked about here. Then I identify, okay, this is the portion where I should potentially include something. Then what could be the connecting thought? I try to create my own answer first. I try to create what should be the feature of something that comes in this blank. Then I go to the sentence, because now I have identified blank one. What should it have? What could it potentially have? Blank two, what could it potentially have? Blank three, what could it potentially have? Blank four, what could it potentially have? Now coming back to the sentence and looking at it, it will give me the absolute, it would most likely give me the right place where I should be fitting it in. If I'm still unsure, it seems like blank one or blank three, both of them could fit. Okay, then move on. You don't necessarily have to attempt this. No. Try to eliminate blanks from running and then finally pick the answer. If I see that the switch from here to here is very, very smooth, you don't need to introduce any sentence in between. I'll happily rule out this option. Okay, option in blank one, the answer would not be coming. Then from cross to cross, this does not require anything. Then I'm left with 3 and 4. Then I will see what is going on here. Max time dedicated to a question is 2 minutes. This is, of course, my own way of attempting mocks and tests and everything. My usual accuracy in FIV paragraph hovers around 50%. My usual accuracy in FIV paragraph hovers around 50%. In para summary, it is closer to 80 to 90% because para summary is nothing but condensed RC, and I'm fairly confident in my RC skills. In para jumbles, my accuracy hovers around 50 to 60%. And understand para jumbles and odd one out and even FIB paragraph, I would put it that these are what you call collateral damages. I am expecting to take a hit. I am expecting to get a few questions wrong within this. My entire focus during attempting the VARC section is let me get RC questions right. Out of 16, my attempt is to get 13 plus questions right here. If I get 13 plus right here, and out of 8, even if I get 3 right here, oh, I'm in a beautiful place. If I'm being extremely efficient on that day and I get, let's say, 15 right here, I end up getting 5 right here. Oh, I cannot even imagine getting more than 5 right in the VA section. But then remember, as I stated in the beginning, this is my skill level. This is how I approach it. You perhaps would be much better at VA than RC, and therefore you choose to devote more time to VA. That is perfectly all right. But then also make sure you try to beef up your RC skills because RC is mathematically having greater weightage. So being constrained in RC is not going to be great. Okay, this is for the VA section. For DILR section, how I go about doing it is I view the question paper in a single view mode. What is it about? Identify the sets which look familiar solvable. When I say familiar solvable or in this identification process, I spend around 3 minutes to 4 minutes per set. Understand? Just because the set is familiar, I will necessarily pick it up. That is not the idea. Just because the set is long, I will leave it. That is not the idea. The idea is in the first 3 to 4 minutes, I try to make a skeletal structure of what that information capture would look like. If I need to make a table, if I need to make a network diagram, if I need to make a Venn diagram, what sort of data capturing mechanism I have to do. First, I identify that, and then I try to put in a few data points. If after I have done that, then I make a judgment call on whether this set will be done by me in, let's say, 8 to 10 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes, 15 plus minutes, or the set appears to be lacking. 8 to 10 minutes, I know I can solve it and I can solve it very quickly. I will pick it up right away. And attempt and solve. If I know how to solve it, but I know it will take me a little bit of time, so I will mark it for review and move on. I will not attempt it right away. If I know how to solve it, but I know it will take me a lot of time because there are lots of cases to cover. Understand, I am able to solve this. I am able to solve this. I am able to solve this. In none of these cases am I going into the exploratory mode. Let me see what this set entails, and then I will figure out whether I should be attempting or not attempting. Next, Latin are those sets in which I read through and it seems like the points are in contradiction with each other. This said that tram can only go out on Tuesday, and the last point says that tram is going out on Saturday and Sunday. How is this happening? It was saying on Tuesday, this is saying Saturday and Sunday. Most likely my interpretation, my understanding of the question was wrong. So if it appears Latin, I will leave it altogether. Okay. Now, these are the ratings that I give. These ones I'll pick up first. These one I'll follow it up. And these are the ones that I will pick up first. These are the ones I'll pick up after that. These are the ones I'll pick up after that. And these I'll leave it later. Now, here, 5 minutes into the set, reassess. What happens is very often when you pick up a DILR set, see, our judgments are not absolutely wonderful. Our judgments are circumspect. We make a lot of errors. So let's say you picked up a set and you start solving, and then you get to a point where you realize, okay, my judgment was wrong. what I was previously thinking would be happening is not really happening in this set. Reassess. You can choose to walk away from a set. One of the worst things that people do is they get too attached to a set that they have begun, and they end up wasting a lot of time on a set which does not deserve that much time because they started it first. I'm sure in some of the first few marks that you would have taken, the first DILR set, you would have given it proper ijjat, 7 to 8 to 10 minutes, you would have attempted it and then perhaps moved on. In some cases, not moved on even then. If you get stuck or you feel like, no, this is not working. A lot of people have this nonsense habit. Let me cancel everything. Let me start afresh. Move on from it right now. Move on from it right now. For two reasons. One, there could be other easy sets that you're missing out on. Secondly, if you're getting something wrong and you keep focusing on it at that time, most likely you will get it wrong in the next iteration itself because the way that your brain is thinking hasn't really changed. Very often you would have seen in your solving, you're attempting a question, you're unable to solve. You throw the pen down, you throw the notebook down, you walk away, you call everybody and tell them that cat is not your cup of tea. You're going to prepare for bank PO, SSC, CGL, and IAS and try to get a medical certificate, whatever you can potentially do in order to secure a seat at whichever prestigious institution you're going to. Then you realize you are not that rich that you can get those certificates made for yourself. Then you come back and start solving. And magically, the next time you start solving, the set or the question gets solved very easily. It is not because you have gone through this entire emotional journey. It is simply because when you are getting something wrong and you're focusing on it at that point of time over and over again, most likely you will continue to think in a wrong fashion. But if you walk away from it and come back and look at it with a fresh set of eyes, the error that you were committing earlier will not creep into your solving right now. And therefore, walking away from the set is perfectly all right. Okay. Now, let's say you identified an error and you still see, okay, in the next 7 to 8 minutes, I'll be able to solve because it was a very minute error. You can sure go on, continue solving. Otherwise, move on. After all familiar sets are over, on to the next most likely set. You would have rated all the sets. See, within the DILR section, all the good DILR scorers that I have seen over the past 5, 6, whatever number of years, most people, by the time 15 minutes are over, have perhaps done one set, seen 3, or by the time 12 minutes are over, have seen 4, or by 20 minutes are over, have solved one set, seen 4. Nobody who scores well in DILR, I have seen, who ends up doing like first 6 minutes they have done a set, or in the next 5 minutes they have done second set. It never happens. The DILR sets that come in CAT, actual CAT, or even in mocks are challenging sets. So it requires a initial level of patience and calm of mind, where even after 20 minutes, if you've done just one set, but you have seen 4, you know which are the next 2 sets you are going to target. Perhaps by the end of the test, by the 40-minute mark, you'll be done with 3 sets. Or maybe you're done with 2 sets. Remember, the target is not to solve all the questions. The target is to solve as many questions as you can. Okay. While all this solving is happening, keep track of time. Keep absolute track of time. Do not get lost in a set so much that you keep on solving it over and over and over again. If the time left is less than 5 minutes, stop the solving right then. Even if you feel like you are 1 minute away from it, stop solving right then. Go to all the other sets, go to all the other questions, attempt all theta questions. Again, this stems from the idea theta questions don't give you a negative. Randomly mark 1, 2, 0, 3, whatever you feel like it, depending upon whatever you've read and understood of the question. Mark those answers. Even if you get one lucky answer right here, this could be the difference between you getting, let's say, 80.08 percentile and 79.92 percentile, and 80 percentile is cut off in a lot of places. Mark those random answers for theta. Never leave a theta question unattempted. Make sure you mark it. But in order to attempt those theta questions, don't end up wasting a lot of time. Then, If you want to come back and get back to solving of that original set that you were in the middle of, great. But as soon as the timer you see is less than 5 minutes, go and attempt all the theta questions that you have not attempted so far. Please make sure you do that every time. Now, let's say 5 minutes, less than 5 minutes are left to go attempt all those theta questions. Me personally, in the last minute, I don't solve anything. In the last minute, I don't solve anything in DILR. I stop all my solving. I keep my pen down. I sit. I take long breaths. I am getting ready because there is very little, for me personally, there is very little question selection happening in reading comprehension for me. I am attempting everything. In verbal ability, I'm more or less attempting everything. In DILR, some selection is happening, but selection is happening at the set level. 1 set, 2 set, 3 set, 4 set. It is happening at the set level. Individual questions, I'm not doing the selection. When it comes to the quant section, I have to make 22 decisions. I have to make 22 disparate decisions. And therefore, because the decision-making exercise is going to be far more nuanced when it comes to quant, I want to give myself a break. Even in VARC, I don't have to, because my reading speed is high, I don't have to give myself a break consciously here. In DILR, I have to give myself a conscious break because 30 seconds, 45 seconds, 1 minute, whatever your timeline is. If it has gone to that point, I leave it. I take a few breaths. I know now the quant section is starting. And usually you would see in the quant section, initial few questions get a lot of time. But the latter questions you tend to miss out on because you are not pacing yourself correctly. I take a pause and I make sure my quant section, I start off rapidly. I move between questions very, very quickly. It doesn't matter if I don't end up solving a lot of questions, but I have to move between it very rapidly. Therein, this round 1, round 2, round 3 work comes into play. Round 1 questions are those that I can solve in 0 to 1 minute, under 1 minute, and preferably without pen. There are lots of questions that I solve without pen. But by what I mean by without pen is in my head, utilizing the options, doing all sorts of nonsense, but I try to solve without pen. Then there is a round 2, the questions that I have marked for review. Questions that I know I can solve and in a reasonable amount of time. This is round 1 questions. These are round 2 questions. These are round 2 questions. I know that I can solve, but it will take me some time. It will take me some time. Now questions 3, round 3 are those questions that I know how to solve, but it will take me a lot of time. Say a question within this variant would be something like an AGP question. Sorry, AGP question of the quadratic AP variant. Say you're asked for 1 plus 4x square plus 1 by 9 plus 4x square by 9 plus x square plus 16x square, 16 6x raised to the power 4 plus 16x raised to the power 6 by 9 plus blah blah blah. What would be the summation of this series? I know how to solve this question. I most definitely know how to solve this question. But it will take me a lot of time because there are going to be at least 4 steps in which I have to write expanded expressions. So these questions, I will again, for these questions, what I do is on the sheet of paper that I'm solving, I record them. These are my special questions. Question 21. I know how to solve it. It will take me a lot of time. But I will move on from it. I will keep it read. This question 21. This is something I note down in my notebook. The ones that I have attempted will appear green on the question palette that I have. The ones that I have marked for review, they will appear purple or whatever this color is. They will appear purple. And questions that I have not understood the question at all. I don't know what the question is asking me to do. Again, what I like to call Latin. I have absolutely no clue what the question was asking me to do. And that happens. That is perfectly all right if it happens. Nobody expects you to solve every question. But people do expect you to solve all questions that you do understand. So ideally, by the end of my 20 odd minutes, I must have seen all 22 questions, and I choose to rush between the questions. If it is under 1 minute, then I attempt it right away. If it is more than 1 minute of solving, it will require some amount of pen work. I move on to the next question. I will come back to it. Whether I keep it in round 2, whether I keep it in round 3, or whether I not attempt it at all of that happens. Average reading time per question is 30 to 40 seconds. Focus on the word average. What I mean by this is, there are going to be certain questions which will have a reading time of 10 seconds. And there are going to be questions which will have a reading time of 60 seconds, because they are arithmetic questions that have a lot of activity happening. First, A and B are mixed, some ratio you've got, then B and C are mixed, and some ratio you've got, then C and D are mixed, and some ratio you've got. Now, if the purity in A had been 50% more, and purity in D had been 25% less, and they had been mixed, then this purity would have gotten. So, how much more concentrated is B compared to C? Something of this nature is given. This reading will take me around 60 seconds with the understanding and capturing of information. And that is perfectly all right. But then there are also going to be questions which are fx is this, gx is this, find f of g of f of x. Those questions also exist. This reading will take me less than 10 seconds. So the average time per question is going to be 30 to 40 seconds. Average time of reading per question is going to be 30 to 40 seconds. The ratings are dynamic. They keep changing with passage of time. What I mean by this is, let's say I pick up a question. And I say this is round 1. I can definitely solve it. This seems very easy. I can definitely do it. And then I start solving it, whether I'm doing it mentally or I'm doing it by a pen. And then I find myself stuck and I see it is taking a lot more time than I had estimated. I move on. I keep moving. I will not wait and no. This is an easy question. This is time and work. How can time and work question not get solved by me? Because I have mastery in time and work. All time and work, even LOD 3 questions, I was absolutely great at. Doesn't matter. They don't care if you were great at time or work. They only care how many questions you got right. Move on. Do not attempt a question just because it is from the favorite topic, and the converse of it is also true. Do not choose to attempt a question or skip a question because it is not from your favorite topic or it is from your favorite topic. Lots of people end up skipping PNC questions. Lots of people end up skipping logarithm-based questions. And they are some of the easiest topics. They are some of the easiest, nicest topics that one can potentially attempt in the exam hall, because they have absolutely no degree of difficulty involved in them. They know that most questions at us know that people don't like PNC questions. They don't like probability questions. So they don't give very difficult questions from that topic. And they know that people love arithmetic questions. So they give insanely nuanced arithmetic questions. That does not mean there aren't easy arithmetic questions or there aren't tough PNC questions. Yes, all range of questions are present. Don't select or reject a question based on the topic it is from. Always select or reject a question based on what is present in the question. Very often, very difficult topic may also have an easy question, and a very simple topic may also have a very difficult version of the question present in front. An easy question and a difficult question carry equal marks. Let's say getting stuck on one question, getting obsessed with it. No, I will have to attempt it. I have to get this right. It's an absolutely foolish way to attempt it. You have to, as soon as you get stuck on a question, you don't know what needs to be done. Move. The more you get into the habit of moving away from a question. See, we are human beings. We are happy when we solve questions. We are sad when we don't solve questions. Getting to a point where you become extremely stoic and don't care if you're able to solve a question or not able to solve a question, that is the end goal. If you get to that point, life will be so much nicer, especially when it comes to attempting the papers. Spread of easy questions is not known beforehand. Why this is mentioned is a lot of people, once you have attempted a few tests, you realize there were easy questions towards the end that I missed out on. Or there were easy questions towards the end that I never got to reading. So some people change their attempt strategy as, okay, Now what I will do is, I will start with the questions at the end only, because I know there is a population of easy questions there. But cat people are even smarter. They ensure that even within the same slot, my question number one versus my neighbor's question number one versus my left neighbor's question number one, they are not identical. The spread of questions, where are the easy questions, where are the tough questions, nobody knows beforehand. And therefore, it becomes imperative for us to go through all the 22 questions, identify the low-hanging fruits, and make sure we maximize our score. Ideally, by the end of 18 to 20 minutes, I should have seen all questions and also marked some 5-6 odd questions. This is like an average candidate. Acha, in my reckoning, an average candidate is a 90 percentile candidate. Average candidate is a 90 percentile candidate. An average candidate within 18 to 20 minutes would have gone through all 22 questions and attempted some 5-6 odd questions. People who are even more advanced and are looking to maximize their score, for you, the timeline will get reduced to 15 to 16 minutes. You should have seen all 22 questions. And by now, you must have attempted, let's say, 8 to 10 questions. Because if this is the section you are looking to maximize your score in, your skill level here must be extremely high. And therefore, number of easy questions for that particular individual must be much, much higher. This is the timeline I follow for myself. And therefore, I'm mentioning it here. Round 2 questions should be marked for review so that the returning to them is easy. You have that color coding available, so you can directly come back to those questions. Those are the ones that I will go for. Only when R2 questions are handled should you move on to R3 questions. And when I say R3 questions, I mean these questions, the ones that I know what to do with, but it will take me a lot of time. Sadly, a lot of people's attempt becomes bad because even when they don't know what the subsequent steps are going to be, what is required in the question, they go into the exploration mode. Okay, let me just write down the age of father, let it be X. So age of son will be Y. So now 6 years ago, X minus 6, age of son was half the age of father. Half more than 3 times the age of father. Something nonsense. If these ratios, if these numbers are not directly visible to you, these are not questions you should be picking up in the first go. These are questions you should be picking up at a later point of time. Do not go into the exploration mode, because what would happen? See, again, it is about questions that will get solved very quickly. The questions that you have no idea, it is very, very unlikely that in the exam hall you are going to have a eureka moment and something that you were finding difficult will automatically get solved. You have to maximize your score, not necessarily solve tough questions. So as soon as you read through it, if you know the next steps, okay, this is my round 1 or round 2 or round 3, depending on how much time you estimate it will take. If you don't know what the next steps are, this gets skipped altogether. Length of question has no bearing on its difficulty level. Long questions can be easy, short questions can be tricky. Length of a question is not going to be a factor based on which you should ideally identify, okay, this is a question I'm going to attempt, this is a question I'm going to skip over. Work neatly. And what I mean by neatly is neat enough for me. Why this is this? See, let's say I'm solving a question, blah, 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 and I'm being very haphazard and I'm writing stuff in such a manner that even if I come back to this page, I will not make sense of it. What this will lead to is, if I come back, let's say, one question I picked up, I thought it was easy. I got stuck, I moved away from it. Now, if I come back to that question, I should be able to see the working so that when I'm solving it again, I'm able to identify what spot I made an error in, or up until what spot I was absolutely confident. Okay, these last 3 steps I'm not confident in. These steps I was confident in. So I will start by working from here. Do not, and this is not just true for QA, this is also true for DILR. Do not write poorly. It does not have to be the most calligraphic writing. It does not have to be very, very beautiful. It has to be good enough that you can make head and tail out of whatever it is, whatever is written down. Start every section afresh without any hangover from the previous ones. Very often what happens is people, when they're attempting the VARC section, let's say there's a very reasonably confident VARC guy. He was hoping that he will attempt all 24 questions in VARC, but that person has only attempted 18. Now, when it comes to DILR, this person is more prone to taking risks because अगर VARC में अच्छा नहीं हुआ तो मेरे को अपना स्कोर बढ़ाने के लिए DILR में अच्छा करना पड़ेगा. This has an underlying assumption of you expect the marks to percentile conversion to be precisely the same across the years, which is not true. In fact, for the last 2 years, you're getting higher and higher percentile at a lower and lower score. Every section is independent of the other. As soon as a new section starts, everything that you did in the last section is done. You shouldn't care whether it was tough, easy, how many you attempted, that is done. Here, make sure you get your best across, and that best does not come from unnecessary risk. Similarly, never walk in with a target of attempting X number of questions because difficulty levels vary across this. Let's say last year's quant section, if somebody had solved, let's say 8 to 10 questions, that person would be in high 90s. To the best of my memory, Shayad 29 score was 99% last year. Score of 29 in the quant section, or even lower, 26. Okay. But a lot of people had walked in with the expectation of, I will maximize my score in the QA section. I will do this, I will do that. I have to get at least 48. And then they ended up messing it up because there were, you could most definitely attempt 8, 9 questions, but attempting 16, 17 questions required significant level of skill, which people did not have. But no, I will attempt 16, 17 questions because that is how the mocks were framed and that is how tests were being done. Please ensure we are not falling for that trap. Walk into the exam hall with the expectation, however many I can solve, I will try to maximize my score. Beyond that, I will do nothing else. Instead, focus on being slow and fast at the same time. What I mean by this is, your solving should be slow and deliberate. Your solving has to be very, very careful. Your decision making about whether you're going to solve something or leave something alone, this should be very fast. Okay, I'm picking this up. Let me pick it up. Let me solve. When I'm solving, when I'm saying slow, it does not mean I will drag it out and I will take 15 minutes to solve one question. What I mean is, solve at a pace that makes sense to you. Solve at a pace where you don't end up making errors. But your decision whether you should be solving or not solving, that should happen very quickly. More often than not, what happens is people take this decision with a lot of time. They do take a lot of time. लॉगरिथम का क्वेश्चन है, लेकिन इसके अंदर ये भी पूछ रहा है, ये भी पूछ रहा है, ये भी पूछ रहा है, करना चाहिए कि नहीं, लेकिन बाद में तो ये अलजेब्रा का ये वाला ज्यादा बड़ा क्वेश्चन है, तो चलो कर देंगे. Now, when it comes to solving, they're very rushed. लॉग में ऐसा कर लेंगे. We will skip 3 steps, we will skip 4 steps, we will skip 5 steps. Solve very appropriately, solve at a pace that makes sense to you. If you want to skip steps, that is fine. But see, these skipping of steps does not lead to a lot of wrong answers for you. In the practice, in the mocks, in the work that you've done previously. The decision making about logarithm-based question doesn't matter. क्या steps होंगे नहीं दिख रहा है. Next. इसमें क्या steps होंगे? अच्छा, allegation का ही है, mix ही करना है, ठीक है, चलो कट करने लग जाते हैं. That is the processing that I'm talking about. You have to be slow in solving, you have to be fast at the same time. And that is the beautiful dichotomy that is being referred to here. These are, of course, my timelines. You can, let's say, if quant is not your strength, and it takes you time to comprehend and absorb and everything, and you decide, okay, I will devote 1 minute per question to read and judge, and that is fine. But then remember, you have to be deliberate in this decision making, and this number should not come out of thin air. This number should come out from you having taken a few sectional tests, you having taken a few mocks, and there realizing what works best for you. 30 to 40 seconds, I feel too rushed to make judgments. But if I have 1 minute of time on average, I'm able to make better decisions, I'm able to make better judgment calls, and I solve it better. I usually go from 1 to 22. I attempt a few, then come back and do my round 2 working. Very often my round 2 working questions end up taking lesser time than my round 1 working questions. But okay, that is also fine. Some people have the trouble of, in the quant section, in the initial phase, they end up taking a lot of time, and then they have lesser time left. In order to overcome that, some of my students formerly have done this. Instead of treating this like one test of 22 questions, treat it like 3 tests. In the first 12 minutes, we will do the first 8. In the next 12 minutes, we will do the next 8. And in the next 12 minutes, we will do the last 6. And then I have 4 minutes of time left over. I can go back to any question that I should be spending more time on. What this enables them to do is the sense of urgency that they were missing, because when the timer is at 37 minutes, 28 seconds, the sense of urgency is not there. Oh, there is a lot of time left. But when the timer is showing 8 minutes, 2 seconds left, the sense of urgency increases manifold. So in order to create an artificial sense of urgency so that they keep on making decisions at a rapid pace, even in the initial part of the section, they break it down into different timelines. You can, of course, again, choose to break it down 12 minutes, 12 minutes, you have 15 minutes, 15 minutes for 11 and 11. That is also fine. And in the last 10 minutes, the questions that I've identified, I will come back to them. Whatever timeline works for you, you can break it into smaller tests. You can break it into smaller tests so that your decision making is accurate. Okay. And that is all that I had to say on the issue. Now is the time for you to ask questions. In case you have a question, do not send it on chat. Do not send it on chat. Please raise your hand. And once you raise your hand, I will call you out. Then we can engage in a discussion. In case you have a question, please raise your hand. Now is the time to ask. We have no questions. We can admit here. Yes. They are sixth. What?
Hi, sir. Good evening. Am I audible?
Yes, yes. What?
Yeah. The very starting part of where you were explaining reading comprehension, I might have missed. So, to start with, uh, how should I go with reading the passages as in, should I
How
go check
should
the questions and then make the physical summary as you said, or should I directly make a physical summary and then attempt the questions?
whatever works for you, try every variation. I don't read the questions, and summary has nothing to do with the questions. Summary has
Right.
everything to do with what is present in the passage. I make mental summary. I don't even make a physical summary. I make mental summary because I'm too lazy to write stuff now. Why I like the English section is because I have to write very little down here. So
Okay.
you can take a mental summary or a physical summary, depending upon what skill level you're at. And see, physical summary, if you've made, let's say for 100, 150 RCs, if you made physical summary, you would get the process and then you would no longer need to make physical summaries anymore. Mental summaries would do the trick. And every paragraph that I read, what was the main point in that paragraph? Sometimes a paragraph contains entirely examples. Sometimes a paragraph presents a contradictory point of view to what was being discussed so far. Sometimes a paragraph gives a dated example to bolster some point that was made earlier. These are the kind of descriptions I have ready for paragraph. If at all I have to go back, I know what location contains what. Beyond that, no other physical summary is needed.
All right, sir. Thank you.
Any other question, people? Any other question? Please do not unmute yourself out of turn. Raise your hand. I will call you out. Then you will talk. Yes, Raj.
Hello, sir. Actually, I was not the best person in my, I was not the good student in mathematics. And actually, my father used to say that every problem is a new problem for you in terms of mathematics. So I was
Yeah.
that weak. So how do I get rid of this fear? I mean, I can manage the English section of the, but maths is becoming like a bigger problem to me. How do I get off this mentality?
Wonderful thing. I'll ask you. Remember that time in your childhood when you couldn't walk for roughly 1 year?
Yes,
How did you learn how to walk?
just walked.
How do you get better at maths?
Sorry,
How do you get better at maths then?
just practice.
That's it. There is no, see, if there existed some magical serum that you, कोई एक जन्म बुद्धि होती कि ये पी लिया और इसके बाद मैथ्स अच्छी हो जाएगी या ये करने से मैथ्स अच्छी हो जाएगी, You can engage in all sorts of, let's say, self-deceiving exercises to believe, no, I'm getting better at maths. But you will only get better at maths, or you will only get confident in a skill when you repeatedly practice it. Even if, let's say, if every question is a new one for you, if every question is a new one for you and you get troubled by quant, डर के आगे जीत है, mountain dew वाली बात है. If you keep
Okay.
at it, that is the only way you get better at it. There is no magical way कि भाई ये कर लेंगे तो इसके बाद से अच्छा हो जाएगा. Of course, along the way, see, what is happening is people who have been in touch with maths and have interacted with it
Hmm.
would have unlocked more secrets or would have the temperament which you currently don't possess. For instance, a lot of time, not just you, a lot of other people who are also troubled in maths, you're not really solving the question. You're looking for where is the question setter trying to trick me. So let me avoid that trap. Instead of reading the question in front of ourselves and then going through the steps that should conventionally follow, we go into यहाँ पे ये बोला तो यहाँ पे ये फंसाने के लिए बोला होगा, या यहाँ पे ऐसा दे दिया तो ये थोड़ी चेक करना चाहता होगा, या इफ आई एम एबल टू सॉल्व अ क्वेश्चन, इतना आसान थोड़ी होगा, इस क्वेश्चन के अंदर तो पक्का कुछ और पूछा होगा, मेरे से भी सॉल्व हो गया तो ये सवाल थोड़ी हो सकता है. Don't get, when you solve more and more questions, you will get over the humps on these fronts and then realize there are, see, if quant is not your strong suit, get to a point where you can solve, let's say, 10 questions in the quant section. Then that is more than enough to get to a decent percentile. And then maximize your score in the VARC section. Nobody expects you to turn into a maths honors candidate. Nobody expects you to be a Ramanujan tomorrow. But being able to solve a few arithmetic questions based around TSD, and if your memory skill is great, go through 5,000, 6,000 quant questions. There will most definitely be around 14, 15 questions that overlap in the actual exam. इतना हो ही जाएगा.
Okay. So just to give much more clarification, because whenever I read a problem, I get blank. That's what happens with me.
Yeah. So
Then I get freaked out, like, अरे बाप रे, नहीं हो रहा. That kind of thing happens with me.
ना तो एक मस्त चीज बता भाई, बचपन में जब चल रहा था, बचपन में जब पहली बार चलना चालू किया था या बात करना चालू किया था, तो पहले दिन से क्या एकदम ही फोड़ू चलने लगा था?
नहीं,
15
definitely
बार
not.
गिरा होगा. साइकिल चलाना जब सीखा था तो क्या फर्स्ट डे से साइकिल चलाना आ रहा था?
नहीं.
लेकिन वहां पे फिर भी लगे रहे and then eventually we mastered the art. No? Here,
Okay.
what we are looking for is an instant rectification mechanism. Nothing of that sort exists. Right now, if you're getting blank, okay, you're getting blank. Let me still try my hand at it. Let me make sense of it. If perhaps it takes you, see, what is happening is other people have gone through the process compared to you with greater detail in the childhood, and they're reaping benefits of that right now. कंपाउंड इंटरेस्ट की बात है, उन्होंने बचपन में ज्यादा मैथ्स कर लिया, इसलिए तेरे से आगे चल रहा है. तुमने बचपन में कम करा है तो उसका खामियाजा अभी भुगतना पड़ रहा है. यू नीड टू डू मोर वर्क राइट नाउ, बट देन the only way around it, you doing more work right now. There is no ऐसा कर लेंगे वैसा कर लेंगे. Emotionally it is very very jarring, but then the resolution for it is more and more practice. There is nothing as in, you can read all those fancy motivational books, The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari, वो सब जो भी नाटक की किताबें होती है वो पढ़ सकते हैं, बट उससे मैथ्स नहीं ठीक होगी. मैथ्स ठीक करने, इट्स वेरी मच लाइक हम गिटार बजाना चाहते हैं, एकदम कॉन्टेक्स्ट बदल देंगे ना, यू विल बी एबल टू. हम गिटार बजाना चाहते हैं और मेरे पास 6 साल से गिटार रखा है घर में, लेकिन जब भी हम गिटार बजाना चालू करते हैं ना, इतनी गंदी आवाज आती है कि हम छोड़ ही देते हैं. तो हम कैसे सीखेंगे गिटार बजाना?
प्रैक्टिस ही करना पड़ेगा. देयर इज नो अदर वे. ओके, थैंक यू.
when it is somebody else तो बहुत जल्दी दिख जाता है ना, अपने में इमोशनल एस्पेक्ट आ जाता है तो बच जाता है. कोई नहीं, कीप एट इट. अभी नहीं, कल नहीं, परसों नहीं, कभी ना कभी तो आएगा ही आटे में. प्लीज कीप एट इट. दैट इज द ओनली वे.
Sure. Thank you.
Yes, Hari.
Yeah, hello sir, good evening. So I have two questions. The first one is regarding DLR. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. So in DLR, regarding VSC and Quant, usually it's VSC is like I managed to score good in both of them, like above 95 but percentile. But in DLR, on my best day, I would maybe able to solve 2, worst days 0 sets. So, like after the exam, maybe I can solve the most of the sets. But during the exam, for some reason, every time I come across a new kind of set in DLR, is it? So my question is there any point in doing theory for DLR? Do I need to study for DLR and then start attempting?
So did you start solving quant without studying any theory?
Quant, I know the basics.
Did you start attempting quant papers and everything without studying any theory?
No,
Achha, for VARC, did you start attempting it randomly without studying any theory, without doing any practice beforehand?
VRC, yes.
You, you have absolutely no, as in you had never practiced para jumbles and para summary and odd one out and fill in the blanks earlier, you directly jump to monks.
No, I have practiced.
Sure. DILR में क्या किया था practice के लिए?
Practice, I would say, just it's mainly mocks and random questions. Do I need to do theory?
No. Arey, see, you're telling me your ailment and you're also telling me your ilaj, and then what do I have to offer? Yes, so much. See, basic theory, it's not like DILR doing the theory will resolve your concern. I'm more concerned with how many sets outside of mocks and sectionals have we practiced DILR.
Yeah, there's no particular section, but if you
How many
the
number
only
of sets,
theory,
how many estimated number of sets have we practiced outside of mocks and sectionals?
mm, there's no estimate as such, sir.
You have absolutely no estimate of how many. Is it? Yeah, bata, what is my age, Hari?
50,
How do you know
40.
my age is 50? How do you have this estimate? This is
Okay.
not even related to your personal life, yet you have an estimate. But number of DILR sets that you have solved, you have no estimate for that. Both the numbers are wrong. But you have no estimate for the number of DILR sets that you attempted. ऐसा कैसे हो सकता है? Some
Maybe
estimate you would have, no?
maybe 70 to 100.
70 to 100. एक चीज, there are certain topics, let's say games and tournaments, or let's say liar puzzles. There is certain theory that you need to cover for them, or for basic calculation techniques. There is certain theory that you need to cover for them. Your DILR concerns will not get resolved because you have covered theory. Your DILR concerns will get resolved when you've done more practice. If you've only solved 70 to 100 sets right now, most likely these sets, you're solving a set means you've taken up a set, spent some time with it, and watched the video solution.
Yeah.
So you've not solved any set. As in, the number of sets you've actually solved would be close to 20, 25.
No,
Because
like I mean,
you solving a set means you taking it from the first point to the last point without any external input.
okay.
You solving a
Yeah.
set is me. Yes, indeed. Now, I have talked to a lot of people versus me having studied psychology. These are two very different things. I've talked to a lot of people and shared, as in I've learned about their life experiences, their troubles, their concerns, versus me having a grasp over the human condition and knowing what emotions they feel and what sort of motivations they have, what sort of concerns they have. These are two very different things. Me having looked at the video solution, जैसे ये समझ लो. Comparison के लिए, you're decent at quant. Quant में, would you say the number of questions you have solved in quant is at least 4 times the number of questions you have solved in DILR for practice?
Yes. More maybe.
And you're good at quant. And you're performing better at quant than you're performing at DILR right now.
Yeah.
Perhaps the better question here is not covering theory. Yes, do cover theory. Basic theory coverage is there, but theory coverage will not be the answer to getting better at DILR. The answer has to be doing a lot more sets and then struggling with sets. Very often when people end up focusing only on watching the video solutions, you end up appreciating solutions. Oh, ऐसे करना था. Oh, ऐसे किया. बहुत अच्छा recording style है. You'll have a lot of appreciation for the set. You'll never have the initiation of solving the set. Because that thought process that goes into what sort of data structure. See, the first decision-making part of DILR, the first part was dedicated to what sort of recording style I should have. People who struggle with DILR, more often than not, we don't even know what sort of table to create. We don't know what sort of data capturing mechanism needs to be utilized in order to get to the answer. And that is where we trip up. And that only comes with you having struggled with, let's say, 200, 300 odd sets yourself. If you, let's say, you pick up a set, you struggle with it for half an hour, and then you watch the solution, still it would be beneficial than you struggling with the set for 5-10 minutes and then watching the solution straight. Because then the learning that should happen will get skipped over entirely. Do that basic theory portion and then do a lot more practice. Right now, that 70 to 100 number, push it up to 250 from past year marks, from different YouTube channels, whatever you're doing. But make sure you are the primary solver, and then you follow it up with watching the solution. It is not simply you watching the solution directly.
Yes. So the second question sort of ties into this. So in, say, even in quant for the harder questions, if I'm practicing, if after like what time should I give up on a question, even practicing?
In practicing, at least 10 minutes to a quant question before moving on from it.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. 10 minutes. Yes. Okay. And for DLR, you would suggest half an hour
See, I would suggest
for an
1
actual
hour.
cat.
I would. There is no actual cat. Every question is half an hour right now. I would prefer if it was 1 hour. The learnings that you get from your own solving, nobody else can give you in this world, which is what you would see in VARC and DILR. Primary skill building phase is self-practice only. But given that we are closer to CAT and you would have competing claims on your time in forms of mock and analysis and everything. So half an hour is a compromise here. That is not the ideal number. 1 hour per set तो लगाना ही चाहिए.
So you mean quality over quantity?
There is no
Okay.
quality and quantity involved here. There is a time crunch.
Right now, yes. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thank you, sir. Yeah.
Yes, Archana.
Hi, sir.
Hmm.
I would like to know how can I build my skills in logical reasoning, critical thinking, and decision making?
By practicing. और कोई तरीका नहीं है.
Okay, sir. Apart from doing the sets and all, like I have seen a few people are suggesting Norman Lewis book for like
Word permit is
building the
Norman Lewis की book word permit is वो vocabulary के लिए है, वो reasoning के लिए
yeah.
नहीं है. रीजनिंग के
No,
लिए लोग
sir.
जॉन समर्स और शकुंतला देवी की पजल्स की बुक, ये सब की नाटक की बातें करते हैं.
Okay, okay.
हम
No,
नहीं
I was
करते,
just using this
हम नहीं
as
करते,
example.
हम किताबों की बातें नहीं करते. सी
हाँ.
रीजनिंग इज वेरी मच अ पार्ट ऑफ आवर एवरीडे लाइफ. Which
Okay.
city do you live in?
So currently I'm in Nairobi, Kenya, but at the time of exam I'll be in India only.
अच्छा नहीं, in India what is your home city?
Kerala.
Kerala. Okay, so from your home, what is the place that you visit most often? Some mall, some friend's house, something that you visit most often.
Yeah, there is a mall that I visit often.
Okay. Now, do you have the perfect way to reach that mall? Where should you take an auto? Where should you take a rickshaw? Where should you, within that mall, where are the lifts present? Where is the escalator present? Where are the shops present? All of that is mapped in your head, and you never sat down and wrote down notes about, okay, here the escalator is, here the lift is, here the shop is. None of that listing ever happened. But due to repeated practice, you visiting that mall over and over again, all those
Yeah.
spots got marked in your head. And that is how
Yes, sir.
reasoning builds. For me, I am based out of Delhi, and Delhi Metro is
Hmm.
our life and blood here. I know
Okay.
which metros, when I was traveling regularly by metro, in recent past I haven't, because I'm
Okay.
gotten off my own. But when I was traveling by metro, I used to go to CP very often. I used to go to North Campus very often. So
Hmm.
which exit I should take so that I am right in front of the escalator, which gate I should be exiting from. I did not even have to actively think about them, despite me not having explicitly written it down somewhere. what happened was when I visited that place 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, all these parts by repeated practice, by repeated repetition, experimentation, repeated experimentation, it got to a point that all of this became logical. Say when I'm sending a message to someone, when I'm playing games on my phone, I don't play games, but back in the day when I used to play games, if you can find ways to find out the most efficient, optimized things in your life, that is the best way of becoming better at logical reasoning in everyday life. But that is a wonderful supplement to solving DILR sets. Apart from
Yeah.
that, in case you have to get better at DILR sets or getting better at critical reasoning, you have to practice a lot of questions, because that is more reasoning based around life, and this is more reasoning based around this kind of questions and the kind of environment that you would be testing in. So practicing the sets is non-negotiable. Apart from that,
Okay.
if you can make small little changes, there are lots of fun games. There is chess, it is an excellent game. There is Taekwondo,
Yeah.
it is an excellent game. There is a Sudoku, that is an excellent game. Then there are river test puzzles on if you have an Android phone.
Yeah.
If you have an Android phone, there is a game by the name of river test puzzles. Then there are lots of silly games present here and there, all of which require a lot of logic. Use that, but don't think DILR practice can be substituted with these random games, because DILR practice is solving a lot of DILR sets. In your free time, when you have nothing better to do, instead of scrolling through reels and stories, I think these are the names. YouTube shorts also now. Shorts, reels, and stories. Instead of that, if you can perhaps spend it on games, time on games, even card games are excellent. I absolutely love card games because probability, nobody learns probability better than those people who have played cards. Probability best learning mechanism is via cards. So these can be all add-ons, but the primary task that you have to do is solve a lot more questions and sets.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much.
I think that will be all people. Folks, okay, bye.